I'm Emily, 27, a luxury real estate agent based in Miami with a high-rise apartment overlooking Biscayne Bay and a Rolodex of clients who vacation in helicopters and sign contracts with Cartier pens. Just last week, I closed a $1.2 million waterfront listing. My cut? 42 grand. My first real win, the kind you dream about when you're grinding through open houses and rejection emails. But when that Cabo message came through, none of it mattered. Not the zeros on the commission check. Not the glass of champagne I'd been saving in the fridge. In one instant, all the polish of my present cracked wide open, and I was right back in my childhood bedroom, 12 years old, legs swinging off the edge of the bed, watching Blake and Tyler tear through glossy ski gear while Mom beamed from behind the camera. I hadn't even known there was a ski trip. That was the kind of family I came from. One where silence said more than screaming ever could, where being left out wasn't framed as punishment. It was just policy. Growing up, I learned early to smooth the edges off myself. My mother didn't like it when I talked back, which meant anything that wasn't agreement. My dad called me overdramatic when I cried and cold when I didn't. I was either too much or not enough, never just right. My brothers, by contrast, were golden retrievers in Vineyard Vines polos. They could set the kitchen on fire and still be met with laughter. I corrected Mom's grammar once and got grounded. I wasn't rebellious, just different. Too curious, too sharp-tongued, too resistant to becoming a carbon copy of the family mold. I didn't worship at the altar of social status. I didn't pretend to care about who joined which country club or who wore which label to the charity gala. I wanted to talk about books, about architecture, about the way people's faces changed when they walked into their dream home. But they didn't care to know those parts of me. College was supposed to be my escape hatch. I earned a scholarship, packed my bags, and boarded a plane to freedom. And then, during my sophomore year, my roommate dropped out unexpectedly. I couldn't cover the rent alone, and when I called home, all I got was a sigh and a suggestion to come home for a semester, save some money. As if my momentum was negotiable. As if pausing my life for their convenience was a reasonable trade. I didn't even have to ask Roger and Linda, my godparents, my mother's childhood friends who became more than that by simply showing up. "Of course you can stay with us," Linda had said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Your family. I remember sitting at their kitchen table that first night, a plate of lemon pasta in front of me, and feeling something I hadn't felt in years, safe, seen, wanted. Roger asked about my classes. Linda wanted to read my poetry. They didn't talk over me. They didn't correct my tone. They didn't make me feel like I had to apologize for having thoughts of my own. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. I was walking on solid ground. And I realized, biology makes you related, but it doesn't make you family. Roger and Linda weren't placeholders for what I lacked. They were the proof that I had never been too much. I had simply been in the wrong house. And now, every time my phone lights up with a family group chat I wasn't added to, or a vacation photo I wasn't there to take, I don't ache with the same confusion. I just remember who clapped the loudest when I got my real estate license. And who didn't. The photos hit like a slap. Blake mid-air on a jet ski, sun glinting off his designer sunglasses. Mom lounging on a cabana daved, margarita in hand, laughing in that carefree way she never did around me. Dad, grinning on the golf course in crisp white, like he'd just won something. A family postcard. A perfect vacation. Without me. Again. There was no "we missed you," no private message saying "wish you could have come." Just smiling faces and the same unspoken message I'd been decoding my whole life. You don't belong here. I didn't care about the ocean breeze or the fresh ceviche or the overpriced spa treatments. I wasn't jealous of the trip. I was enraged by the message. That I was so forgettable, so optional, that excluding me didn't even require discussion. That kind of rejection doesn't scream, it settles. Into your ribs, into your gut, into the voice in your head that starts to ask, what's wrong with me? But not this time. This time, I didn't spiral. Because this time, I had something they didn't know I'd earned, freedom. $42,000. It was more than a check. It was validation. It was the reward for years of hustling. Of staying late at open houses that reeked of mold and desperation. Of showing million-dollar homes to men who'd ask if I was someone's assistant. Of hearing "you're too young to be doing this" from people who couldn't close a door, let alone a deal. And now, I could close the door on them. I'd opened my laptop and didn't even hesitate. Maldives, 7 nights, overwater villa, infinity pool, butler service, $28,000. Click. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation, a rewriting of the story I'd been handed, the one where I was always the footnote to their highlight reel. But now, I was writing the headline. I stared at the booking confirmation, my heart thundering with something dangerously close to joy. Not because of the destination, but because of the company I was about to share it with. I dialed Linda first. She picked up on the second ring. "Emily, everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, already smiling. "More than okay. I just wanted to let you know. Don't make any plans for next week. I'm flying you and Roger to the Maldives." There was silence on the other end, then a small broken sound, and then, "You're serious?" I've never been more serious about anything. I could hear her crying softly, trying to keep her voice steady. Roger came on the line next. "You don't have to do this, Em," he said, voice thick. It's too much." "No," I replied. "Too much is being excluded from a family that's supposed to love you. Too much is spending your life begging for crumbs of affection. This is exactly the right amount." He didn't argue again. That night, I'd opened a bottle of champagne, the one I was saving for when something really big happens. And as the bubbles fizzed and the city lights shimmered below, I felt it settle in my chest. I wasn't waiting to be chosen anymore. I had chosen myself, and the people who had always chosen me. From the moment my bare feet touched the sun-warmed boards of the dock, I felt something shift. Not in the air, though it was softer here, kissed with salt and sunlight. Not in the water, though it gleamed like poured glass beneath us. The shift was inside me, quiet, subtle, seismic. A loosening, a letting go. For the first time in years, I wasn't anticipating judgment. I wasn't bracing for silence or sidelong glances. I wasn't shrinking myself to fit into a space that had never been carved for me. I was just being. We arrived at the villa just before sunset, and even Roger, stoic, gentle Roger, stood at the edge of the infinity pool blinking like he couldn't quite believe it was real. Linda gasped when the doors opened to reveal the ocean beneath our feet. She touched every surface like it was sacred. I'd never seen them like this. I'd never felt like this. The first night, we ate barefoot under the stars, seafood so fresh it might have swum to the plate. I popped a bottle of champagne while Linda cried happy tears into her linen napkin. Roger made a toast with a shaking hand, voice thick. "To Emily," he said, raising his glass, who made a space for all three of us to finally breathe. The next morning, we snorkeled off the deck. Linda's laughter echoed across the waves when a school of rainbow-colored fish darted past her. Roger floated beside me, face tilted to the sky, and I realized I hadn't seen them rest in years. Not like this. Not fully. We weren't just on vacation. We were healing. By the third night, the Maldives had worked its quiet magic. We sat watching the sun fold itself into the horizon like an ember sinking into silk. The only sound was the gentle hush of the tide and the soft clinking of our glasses. Roger turned to me, eyes reflecting the last traces of gold. "You've built something beautiful, Emily. You've grown into someone your parents should have been proud of." His words filled the silence like warm light. I smiled. But somewhere in that smile was the familiar sting. Because the people who were supposed to love me first never even asked where I was. Not a single call. No, "Are you okay?" No, "We miss you." So, I posted one photo. Just one. Me, standing between Roger and Linda in a flowy sundress, arms around the only people who ever made me feel chosen. The ocean behind us. Joy on all our faces. The caption simple and sharp. Finally found space for real love. The reaction was swift. My phone buzzed less than an hour later. "Mom, are you serious right now?" Then Blake, "You flew your godparents to the Maldives? You've lost it." Finally, my father, "We're done. This is petty and childish." Each message colder than the last. Not one asked if I was happy. Not one asked why. Just bruised egos and thinly veiled resentment. As if my joy was a betrayal. As if my peace cost them something they never offered me in the first place. I stared at the screen, and then slowly I blocked each of them. Not in anger. Not in revenge. In peace. Because I had finally learned something they never taught me. Sometimes you have to stop knocking on locked doors and build your own house with open windows, warm light, and space for love that stays. The last 2 days in the Maldives felt different, not just because we'd settled into the rhythm of paradise, but because I had finally settled into myself. Roger and Linda spent those days like children freed from gravity. They laughed over breakfast fruit shaped like flowers, got sunburned in silly patterns from falling asleep on the deck, and danced, literally danced, under string lights after dinner like no one was watching. And I did watch, every moment, closely, because witnessing their joy, their ease, their utter comfort in their own skin was like watching a version of life I didn't know I was allowed to have. It was love without strings, connection without performance, a kind of intimacy that didn't require me to prove I was worthy of it. They deserved this. Every wave of laughter, every sip of coconut rum, every breath of salty air. And somewhere deep in my chest, I began to accept that I did too. For most of my life, love had felt like a test I was always failing. Be quieter, be easier, be less sensitive. Don't stir the pot. Don't be dramatic. Don't ask for more than what's offered. Take your crumbs and be grateful. But here, there were no crumbs. There was a feast, and I wasn't just allowed to sit at the table, I had set it. I kept waiting for guilt to show up, the way it always used to. That familiar tug behind the ribs, that whisper of maybe you're being too harsh. Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you overreacted. But it didn't come. What came instead was relief. The kind that seeps into your bones when you finally stop fighting to be loved by people who never learned how. The kind that replaces ache with air. The truth was brutally simple. They hadn't just left me out of Cabo, or Aspen, or the other vacations that came with hashtags and filters and zero mention of my name. They had left me out of their hearts. Not because I wasn't enough, but because I wasn't them. I didn't play the role they'd silently assigned me. I didn't blend in, didn't bow down, didn't shrink the way they'd grown comfortable expecting. I had spent years trying to fit into a picture I was never meant to be in, cropping my edges, editing my truth, until I finally picked up the frame and shattered it. When I blocked them after that photo post, it wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of self-respect. Not a door slammed in anger, but one closed, softly, finally, with a hand that no longer trembled. Because I had learned something profound here, under this golden sun, beside these two gentle souls who had shown up for me when no one else did. You don't have to keep proving your worth to people who refuse to see it. You can leave the room. You can stop knocking. You can build your own space, bright, open, full of laughter and love, and fill it with people who choose you, not out of obligation or image, but from pure, unflinching choice. And when you do, you don't feel lonely. You feel free. When the wheels touched down on American soil, the sunlight outside the cabin windows looked the same, but I wasn't. I powered on my phone the moment we taxied toward the gate, expecting the usual junk, flight deals, app notifications, maybe a client inquiry or two. Instead, I was met with 37 unread messages. Some from my mother, some from Blake, a few from numbers I didn't recognize but instantly knew, family friends, distant cousins, people who hadn't said my name in years unless it was followed by "how's she doing these days?" The previews were enough. I didn't need to open them to know what they held. Really, Emily? Your poor mother is heartbroken. Why would you humiliate your family like that? You think money makes you better than us now? This isn't how grown-ups handle conflict. Some messages were angrier, laced with sarcasm and defensiveness. Others wrapped their criticism in the soft tissue of fake concern. A few tried to play peacemaker, suggesting a family dinner to talk things through, like it hadn't taken them a full decade to notice I existed. I didn't respond to a single one. Instead, I did something small, something quiet, something that meant everything. I printed a photo from the trip, my favorite one. Roger, Linda, and me, seated at the edge of the infinity pool, our feet dangling in turquoise water, sun on our skin, heads thrown back mid-laughter. It wasn't posed. It wasn't filtered. It was real. It was us. I bought a frame, placed it on my kitchen counter, right where the light hits in the morning. Every time I walk past it now, I don't just see a memory. I see a truth. That family is not built from DNA or legal paperwork or shared last names. Family is built in the spaces where you are seen, understood, and held. It's built in the moments when someone looks at you and says, "I got you," and means it, not because it's convenient or expected, but because love doesn't need a reason. Roger and Linda never owed me anything, but they gave me everything that mattered: stability, kindness, belief in my future, and most of all, presence. That $28,000 I spent wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't some power play. It wasn't even about them, my so-called real family, with their matching outfits and cold silences. It was an offering. A gift to the two people who filled the holes others left. A thank you without words. A reminder that love deserved to be celebrated, not hidden. But more than that, it was an investment. In my peace, in my voice. In the truth that I don't need to contort myself anymore for scraps of affection. I didn't just buy a vacation. I bought clarity. I bought the end of begging to be chosen. I bought the beginning of choosing myself. And in doing so, I stepped out of the long, exhausting shadow of a family who only made room for the parts of me that didn't make them uncomfortable. Now I live in the light. And for the first time in my life, I don't just feel tolerated. I feel loved. I feel whole. I feel like I belong.